Welcome to Roots and Reason. I'm Preston,
I'm Holland.
and we're here starting a podcast, a new venture to kind of discuss the topics, issues, and current events. Hopefully, from a multi generational perspective, me being kind of a old Gen X, excuse me, and Holland,
Gen Z.
Gen Z. So we come from long time span of history of difference between the perspectives that are going on. One of the things I can't help notice, there's a profound amount of change taking place in the country right now. And there's a huge shift. I've never seen it even like this in my entire life. And I've paid attention to this stuff all my life. I've always been kind of engaged in that way.
Yeah.
And people are kind of freaked out. People on the left are, they're coming from their angle. People on the right are having their moment in the sun with the Trump election. And in the meantime, everything is so apart. People can't even talk anymore. I mean, even as a kid, I remember you don't talk about money, religion, or politics at the dinner table kind of a scenario. But you could go to the bowling alley with your friends and neighbors, and you could have a chat about, Jimmy Carter this, Ronald Reagan that. And people had difference of opinions, but it ain't like today. Today, people just go, well, we see it. They're trying to burn down Tesla because they don't like, wow, when we get to the point where it's almost domestic terrorism. And you being in college, you're ground zero to a lot of this. So you're seeing kind of a profound shift of stuff that I don't get to see in rural Tennessee.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like I'm glad that you brought up the fact that you were talking about how, like, in old times, I don't know what else to say, but in old times, you kind of, you don't bring up religion, you don't bring politics, you don't bring up money. But in my day, it's like that's the basis for all conversations. So, like, where do you go when that is what all conversations lead to, and that's how people determine whether they want to talk to you, and they basically determine your value by how you answer those three questions.
Right. Well, I think one of the things that I've noticed where part of this change kind of I've seen the pendulum go back and forth, and it's done it long before you or I were ever in the world.
Yeah.
Is, growing up into the mid late 70s into the 80s, coming out of the hippie generation, all the long hairs and peace, love, and then by the 70s, you still had the long hairs, but it was getting shorter. We started into disco. Then we went into the 80s. It was big hair. And all of a sudden, it wasn't about the hippie things. It was like Gordon Gekko, how to make the most money, Wall Street. All the kids wore Izods and button-up shirts and khaki pants and had the perfect waiver haircuts. And then it's like we went a little bit too far right. There was that moment of like intense social conservatives where I couldn't go to an Ozzy Osbourne concert without all the church people out protesting. That's devil music. And then people kind of got tired, and the pendulum kind of started going back, and like in the 90s, then we had like the grunge movement there for a while.
Mm-hmm.
And then by the aughts, I don't know, it was towards 2010 where I noticed a really big shift. When it really started going kind of hard to the left, it went kind of beyond liberalism, and it went into, I don't know, I sometimes say Marxist, I don't know, identity politics and things.
Yeah.
And the reason I think that that's important is because in the very phrasing of that, identity politics is to a lot of the people that are young people, particularly that are coming out of academia and stuff, everything is political.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter what it is, what your job is, your views, everything gets condensed down to that. And for someone like myself, I think this is part of my difficulty of understanding younger generations is why do you see the world as everything political? It's not.
Yeah. I feel like it comes from our sense of news, like what we get our information from. Like you and I were talking about a while ago, that everything that you receive the news from is with an agenda behind it. And I feel like a lot of people in my generation don't want to recognize that, or they recognize it to the extremes. And so they're like, well, my newscaster has this agenda, but I align with the agenda, so I'm okay with the agenda being pushed on my end, but I just cannot even comprehend, and it's so awful and corrupt that this other side is pushing their agenda at the same time. So it's like it's a sense of justice in the sense that they feel like they are owed their right to push their idea, but no one else should push theirs. And this has just created a huge divide of people feeling like their voice needs to be portrayed in order for there to be security in their future. But we're so young that no one even knows what security in the future looks like. It's like, well, this
Right.
sounds good to me. This aligns with my values, or it plays into my emotions enough where I'm going to align with this. And it just kind of gets carried away because it becomes a self identity, a value like a religious system. And when you go after something that is a religious system, people are going to put up those barriers and boundaries and kind of fight back in that way.
Okay, so I kind of get that, and with the I don't, think that people have really malice in their heart when they come from this. I think that,
Yeah.
I can even poke fun of, and, so folks know I'm a radical moderate. I'm as milquetoast as they get. I'm the guy in the middle of the road. I got the left going this way and the right going that way. They both yell at me. It's like, pick a side. And I'm like, I don't want to pick a side. But when I see, the blue hair stuff and the nose ring and the screaming kind of stuff of blaming cis white general men as oppressors and history and this and that, I don't even think it's coming from, again, an honestly a malice thing. I think you might be right on this. It's like in their eyes they truly believe that they are doing the right thing. It's like we got to make up for like past injustices or something.
Yeah.
So I get that, and it's don't want to hate on anybody for it. And yeah, it's a pain in my back that some of this stuff, it's just like, do you listen to yourself?
Yeah.
Do you hear it kind of coming out of your mouth? Does that make sense? And we all know that when we watch different podcasts, there's some people out there that are really clever. When they get asked a question where it really comes down to kind of an illogical type of assembly of, if you believe this, then wouldn't that mean this? And you could literally see the wheels going, and it's like, well, yeah, kind of. And it's like, again, you're someone that's either in high school, college, or at that age. Hasn't that ever crossed your mind independently of anything else?
Education these days doesn't focus on teaching you how to learn, which is the reason I'm so excited about this podcast. It's just diving into it and actually trying to learn a concept and not just being force fed, hey, this is why it is this way, and you just have to believe that. But that's how you're taught. I mean, I went to private school growing up, which is supposed to be like the best of the best education. You're supposed to really dive deep. And I come out of it and I'm in my college classes and I'm sitting there, I'm like, I was taught from one perspective, but I was taught that perspective was the whole perspective. And I think
Right.
when you're taught that for so long, it's really hard to kind of reassess where you're at, because that it's reassessing your identity and your values. And that can be a really dangerous thing when you are like approaching 18, 21, because you're really trying to find who you believe in and what you believe in. And if you went your whole life thinking that your life is through this one perspective of education telling you that life is exactly the way that they're telling you life
Right.
is, and now you're being thrust into this world where so many people are having strong opinions, it's like it's gonna crumble at one point, or you're just gonna hold on to it and try and like just tough it out and
Right.
embrace anything that comes along with the identity that you've given yourself. You just adopt it because it's easier to conform than it is to actually make your own identity and learn what you're actually supposed to be learning about and not just inheriting ideas from other people.
That just blows my mind away. To me, that's like such an overreach of what school's supposed to do.
Yeah.
Back in my day, I used to walk to school uphill both ways in the snow and all of that. But really, it was math, reading, history, just a plain Jane academic stuff. It was trying to get you to a proficiency level of, can I go and read something like Machiavelli and understand the kind of the things that were being here, or read Walt Whitman? Do you understand kind of what is, or Kipling, and do you understand what you're reading?
Yeah.
Not to mention the ability to be able to read stuff that, believe it or not, the book behind me on the top is Uncle Remus. Now, if anybody that tried to read that today, almost nobody that I come across can read it. It's difficult because it's written in this Bear Fox, this really hardcore old South, and it, it's not easy. It's kind of like reading the Silmarillion from Tolkien, the
Yeah.
prehistory of everything. Not an easy read.
Hmm.
Um, School, in my memory throughout my entire life, never made any kind of inflection of how I should think, what I should think. It was just, here's some material, you figure it out. And then maybe that's one of the reasons that Gen X are coming into their own right now. There's a lot of hatred towards the boomers out there for burning the world down.
Yeah.
They're kind of at wars with Gen Z and millennials. Not so much Gen Z, I think maybe more millennials, but and that's part of the reason why I'm so interested in it is I come from a generation, you were pushed out the door. It's like, here's life, go figure it out. I got a job to do. Be home when the street light comes on for dinner. Don't be late. Don't get in trouble.
Yeah.
There was a high expectation for you just to experience it on your own. Figure it out. Boys got in fights at the bus stop. There was Heathers, the mean girls thing. They had they got to figure it out.
Yeah.
And it wasn't always pretty and certainly may not be the best way, but I watch people who say that young people that say words or violence and things, or hearing you talk about education trying to maybe, I could be wrong, but it sounds to me like they're putting some sort of an inflection or a narrative of how important this is to like how you approach life. Man, we never had any of that. We were just like given, the nutrients and the minerals and vitamins and say, okay, go make your body healthy.
Yeah.
We ain't going to tell you how to assemble it.
Yeah.
Some of you are going to be good at it. Some of you are going to fail. Some of you are going to do great, but figure it out.
Yeah.
And I think maybe that be an issue or some part of the problem. I mean, what?
I feel like it's a fear of freedom, because with freedom comes a lot of questions and a lot of pushback. And I think educators today, there are obviously wonderful educators. I've had amazing teachers and professors throughout my time, but there's always this fear of like, what if I don't have the answer? And I was talking to a lot of people around me, and I was like, it just seems so weird because we don't want to get in conversations if we don't have an answer that we can prove with like 5 bajillion million facts, which is great. Like, it's good to know what you want to talk about, but that has created this environment where conversation isn't explored. It's just, you need to know this because this is just a clear cut fact and you can just live off of that. Not, hey, how are you going to engage in conversation, engage in these different ideas? It's just, there's no room for that. It's really a fear of being wrong, which is funny because why do we think that there's a right in the first place?
Well, good point. I have a mentor of mine, was my sister's husband one time, Dave. He was one of these just kind of people that were a fearless individual. And I was very impressionable at the time. And I just remember one of the things that he said to me was, and it stuck with me my whole life, was, Preston, don't be afraid to fail.
Yeah.
You're not going to get everything right. You're going to go through your life from one mistake to the next. How you handle that and address your mistakes or whatever, that's really what's most important.
Mm-hmm.
And the more I thought about it, I was like, well, yeah, it's like if you're not making mistakes, you're not making progress. Mm-hmm. You're not really learning anything. Anybody can learn a script or whatever, but do you understand what you're reading?
Yeah.
We used to have a class called Reading Comprehension.
Mm-hmm.
So it was one thing just to be able to read English, part of it, then you had composition, but you literally had that, do you understand what you're reading?
Yeah.
And sometimes I have to wonder today. I know you've seen these people that walk in the street and say, hold a microphone and someone go, young person say, what's 3 times 3 times 3? 9. Wait a minute. You graduated high school. You're sophomore year of college.
Yeah.
What? So some of that baffles me. I think there's certainly some shortcomings in academia. Although here's something I've noticed a shift was, particularly with Ivy schools, schools when I was growing up were there were only 2 people that really went to school. Either A, you were an exceptional person, that had the best possible grades out there, or you had parents that could be able to afford it.
Mm-hmm.
Even stuff like student loans and stuff like that were not a big thing.
Mm-hmm.
So when you would think of Harvard, Yale, Brown, Stanford, etc., these were the prestige. This is the cream of the cream of the cream, the worldwide. This is up there with Cambridge and Oxford, and then it seems like where we're at today is they went off a deep end of one version, political, cultural kind of a leaning. It became very unbalanced. But as a consequence of that, though, I'm noticing that there are colleges now that are finally going, whoa, let's go back to, you used to get a Bachelor of Science to say, hey, can we clone T-Rex? You get a liberal arts degree that said, is it wise to do so?
Yeah.
And they're getting, I think that there's some colleges that are, I think, catching on to, because there is a lot of value in a liberal arts degree, and there's so many professions and things that this is absolute required.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe kind of what we're getting at is maybe it's not teaching people what to think, but the mechanics of how to think.
Yeah. And I think that starts in high school, but it is really just a waterfall effect because colleges are looking for these high marks, high grades, like picture perfect on a resume type of person. But what happens when those people go to college and they don't really know why they want to go there? They're just told,
Right.
no, you have to be successful. But what even is success nowadays? And what does it mean to go to college thinking it's going to make you successful? And now you're pedaling back and you're in these classes. No one's even engaging in conversation because the point is not to learn. The point is just to get the degree. So like, why would you go into so much debt for something that you're not actually obtaining anything from? It's just such a weird,
Right.
It's a lie that you're told in high school for my generation that it's going to be this rigorous world and you're going to engage in a lot of important discussions, but then you end up in a college class and no one's even paying attention to the lecture. So what do you do in that scenario? Like, how do you...
Everybody's too afraid to have a discussion. You might not say the right thing.
Yeah, it's not there to teach you how to learn. It's just there to be, hey, can you fill in these boxes? AI can fill in boxes. AI can do a rubric. And that's why people are flying through school now, because they can just input this rubric, pump out a paper. There has zero thoughts have to pass through
I got Grok.
Yeah.
Grok is right here, ChatGPT.
Yeah. It's such a weird dynamic. And when you think about it, I look around the people around me and I'm thinking about all the money they're putting into this degree, and they're worried about the debt, but they're not worried about making anything out of the debt. The main goal is just, how am I going to get out of this debt I put myself in, which eliminates any purpose for college in the first place. Just don't go in the debt in the first place.
We see that's another thing that maybe that has changed since I've left school. Was in the late 70s, 80s, more the 80s, towards high school and stuff, was when you hit your sophomore year, you were able to start also being able to take Vogue Tech classes. You want to do auto body, auto repair, you want to be an electrician, a plumber, whatever. They exist. Same thing with like the 4-H. Oh, you're going to go into farming and agriculture. And it's like, I think that there was an understanding even in the 80s that, look, not all kids are going there to be lawyers, doctors, politicians. Somebody's got to go out there, milk the cow, wire together the telephone, etc. And it wasn't really looked down upon or anything. That was just a normal thing. Some kids were more inclined to go hammer wood together and cut things out and make beautiful coffee tables or whatever. And there's a good living in that. Carpentry is almost a weird thing. I don't know if you caught that one silly South Park episode where the handyman were like the richest people on the planet because no one knew how to fix anything.
Yeah. Yeah. I think of plumbers all the time. I'm like, that is a career where you can go in and make money because there's going to be so much demand and no one's doing it. But it's weird. Like, trades are not even mentioned in high school. I have a couple of friends that went into trades, but it was more of a parent-led decision, or they're like, wow, college just doesn't seem like a smart option. And they had the mindset of, okay, why would I waste this money on something I'm not actually going to obtain anything from personally? Why don't I just go use my skills for something else and I can engage my brain outside of my actual career? Which is an amazing thing that they had, but no one was actually guiding them in that direction because school schools are judged on how many kids can you get to Ivies, how many kids can you get to college.
Right.
It's not.
Yeah, that's true too, because there is. I don't know how I feel about the whole thing, getting rid of the Department of Education. On one hand, I say, well, we went through most of our nation's history without it.
Yeah.
On the other hand, a little bit scary. Again, aside from that, though, there is kind of maybe a connection between even academia and business of what do you want to produce? Do you want to produce button pushers that are efficient at pushing buttons, but not quite smart enough to ask why they're pushing the buttons?
Yeah.
What are you trying to get out of this? Interesting. I took home ec in high school. I loved
Doesn't
it, man.
exist. Yeah.
Right. We had to make these little sun visors and bake brownies. And it was like easy work,
Yeah.
Same thing with like wood class. Had to build a lamp.
Yeah.
Oh, it's a spatial thing. Guys love that sort of stuff. So,
Yeah.
But then again, you could take German, French, and for a while there was even one semester of Latin for those very niche kids that were either going to be doctors or lawyers.
Yeah.
And the French teacher happened to teach that. And that was at a school that only had 423 students in it in rural Missouri. So yeah, it's a little bizarre to me. That's like, well, Tennessee, for what it's worth, some stuff we do is really backwards, like we're 20 years behind the times. Other stuff that we do is kind of amazing, up to date. Anybody who's a resident of the state is entitled to 2 years worth of community college, or they can use that apply it towards a 4-year degree. And there's a sudden big push of a realization, at least here in Tennessee, that we need more kids to be electricians and plumbers. By the way, they're making boatloads of money.
Yeah.
I mean, insane. They're making more than some attorneys.
Yeah.
I mean, it's crazy. So, not to mention there's like a tech angle and everything now. Buildings are smart, and so it's not like just wiring up a light switch anymore. It gets pretty in depth. So it's like there's a lot of economic opportunities for young people in this. And the state, I think, is realizing that as we're trying to attract more tech type businesses. They're like, how are we going to attract them if they don't have a workforce to assemble it? Like Whisper Aero in Crossville. It's a new startup company building motors, power plants for aviation that are electric.
Very interesting.
How cool, in a small little podunk town in Tennessee. But who's going to assemble this stuff if you don't have an educated workforce of young people that can go, it's factory work, but it's tech work.
Yeah.
So they're putting it together. Yeah.
That's good. That's good. I'm glad that it's happening somewhere, because I truly am lost in the sense that I just don't understand how that would have fallen away. Like, where did we stop pushing that? And I can understand the push for college and education and the idea of, oh, well, smart people go to college and you need to be a smart person. But I just don't understand how it got to this point where none of my friends are even considering trades. And it's not even like they want to be in college. They're in college because it just is a gap for them and they can figure out what they want to do, but they don't have a goal out of it. So it's like, why is that even
they need a piece of paper?
Yeah.
It's like the paper's a ticket. Yeah. You can't ride the ride unless you get the ticket.
They don't even know what ride they want to ride. It's just such an ingrained, you need to go to college, and trade is never talked about. I'm starting to hear it more as my generation gets older, and they're like, wait, shoot, like I need money, and they're looking up, how to make the most money, and AI is pumping out, go to the trades, and they're like, maybe I will go in the trades. But how did we as a culture make it seem like any work was less than other work?
Well, I think there's probably a reason why things like government and culture and things sometimes get so askew too. The world's going to go to where you incentivize it. So all of a sudden, like you're saying, well, starting even from my generation that was the cream of the cream of the cream. That was, man, if you made it to Harvard, even got into Harvard, you could be a C student at Harvard. You still punched your ticket for life, man. You're set.
Yeah.
And now it's just you tell someone that, I went to Harvard.
Yeah.
Okay, why did we go from prestige cream of the cream to it? Well, we're starting to see that a lot of the kids that are graduating out that are
Yeah.
I would rather hire some kid I hired off the street and train him in-house than I would going to do all that. It's like economically. So okay, we're going to incentivize, we're going to change the incentive structure to do something else. And this is one thing, getting into the change of the country we're going through. Um, Kind of to be transparent, I've never been a fan of Trump. I don't hate the guy. Some of the stuff he does, I like.
Yeah.
When I see him when he got shot, the whole fight, fight, fight. Whoa.
Yeah.
Maybe there's a side of Trump that I didn't consider before. I'm going to give him more the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah.
I'm liking some of the stuff that I see. Not all of it. There's some
Yeah.
stuff, we'll certainly talk about in future casts, but there's that kind of the political shift that's taking place to they call it the MAGA, Make America Great Again. Personally, I think America's still great.
Yeah.
And I don't want to look back at, because there were times, and I think in the past, I think of the 80s, maybe it's because I was young, that was like the best time in America ever. Swatch watches and Van shoes and Van Halen jump on the radio. I mean, that was glorious days. Okay, was that because I was young, or was it because times were really good that thing? We didn't have a lot of racial stuff. Thing was just, the world was pretty milquetoast and happy, and we got to be kind of gluttonous and consumers. It was good times.
Yeah.
So when they say Make America Great Again, okay, again compared to what?
Yeah.
Jim Crow, the 80s, 1880, I don't know what exactly you mean by that, but I'm not going to look back. I'm not going that way. I can't. I don't have a time machine. I'm going to look forward, and I still think America's great. I would consider myself, love my country. I'm a patriot, but I am, on the other hand, kind of an America First agenda, and with that, I think is one of the things I liked about this MAGA movement was they reached across the aisle to people like Bobby Kennedy, Tulsi Gabbard. These were people, man, they were on the left.
Yeah.
We've watched a lot of people that were left, the Joe Rogans, Eric and Brett Weinsteins, and there's a lot of people that kind of came from maybe classic liberal, center left, whatever, that kind of went into the MAGA movement. And to the credit of Trump, he reached across the aisle. And now I've seen more unification out of Trump, of all people, than I ever did the previous administration. Well, we're going to bring America together. I didn't see anything like that out of them.
Yeah.
So in that kind of a vein of the future of, again, struggle with the whole Make America Great Again. I still think we are great, but America First. There's a lot of things changing and we will be talking about in the days to come, why it's important, economics, and why young people, you need to go learn something like Fidelity, or, there's a handful, Schwab.
Yeah.
Why it is important to learn how to do your finances, not balance your checkbook and probably invest a little bit, start squirreling the money away now. Economic migration. That was something that I experienced. My mom was a widow trying to raise 5 kids. You packed everything up, you got the U-Haul, and you went someplace cheaper.
Yeah.
And I look around, there are states like Iowa, Kansas that will pay you, give you a third of an acre of land, as long as you live there for a year, to build a house for free. There are places that are trying this, like, okay, well, why aren't young people taking advantages of this? There's a lot of places that Tennessee used to be that way, not so much anymore, but Louisiana, Kansas, Oklahoma, man, there's a lot of places in the Midwest that are clean, safe. Okay, they're not as glamorous as California, New York. If you're starting out in the world, where do you want to go with the glamour today? At some point, you got to put in the work as a person. Where do you want to go do that? Where's the best possibility? So talking about things like economics, finance, obviously politics, health. I know you've got some input on there. You've got some insights. That's a big thing. We're going to see that the American diet's kind of a joke. Look how all of us well, not all of us, many of us are too rotund. And it's like, we need to start eating stuff better, not out of boxes, and maybe more in the garden a little bit. So where do you kind of see where this whole, if you will, MAGA or America First kind of this, you can certainly, I'm sure you see it from a different perspective, but where do you feel it's
Definitely.
going?
I agree. I don't really understand what we're looking back as the basis of America being great. I don't think it's clear, but I don't think it's meant to be clear. I think it's just a catchy slogan of,
Yeah.
oh yeah, we were there. Our country is built on this idea that we have the freedom to be great and we can continue to be great. And I agree with that. I agree with most of what I was promised by the Trump administration going into this, but I think that from my perspective, it's a lot more polarized because I see people on both sides that are clinging to both sides. It's not a lot of middle
Right.
ground. And so I see MAGA and I see a lot of people that carry around this idea of like facts over feelings and don't take my guns and just kind of a lot of hatred coming from it and a lot of
Yeah.
fear. I think both sides have that, and it gets lost in our communication with each other when we forget this idea that there's truth on every side. It's just what perspective are you coming at it? And when I see the MAGA party in my generation, I see a lot of fear and hope, especially because they won the presidency. But I don't see a lot of room for communication beyond that. It's like, I think that this is a
Yeah.
great idea, but I don't know why it's a good idea, or I couldn't defend what he's doing in a logistical way or a political way. I can't describe the political science behind my views. It just gives me hope, and I had fear before, and I aligned with
Right.
these people on a, they kind of look like me, they sound like me, they had a similar past to me, so I'm just going to cling to that, and I'm going to hate everyone who doesn't because they must not
Right.
want America to be great. And I think that's kind of where I see the big divide in my generation is like, yes, you've always had to pick a side in American politics, but I would argue that right now it is pretty extreme. Like, there really is no room for a conversation if you're in the middle or if you are on the opposite side of the person you're talking to.
Right. The tribal stuff, like I said, there was a really wonderful book way back when called Bowling Alone.
Mm-hmm.
And the whole premise that the guy wrote this was we stopped being able to sit around with our friends and stuff, playing cards or Uno or bowling or sitting there at the softball field and have a conversation. What do you think about, and have it from a different kind of perspective without getting rancid.
Yeah.
Um, the cancel culture that became so pervasive in the left of recent, I hate to see it. The only social media that I do out there really is Twitter,
Yeah.
X, and I go through and it's like you're saying, I see there's a certain hopeful stuff of like, God, I'm over that stuff on the left. And then all of a sudden we're seeing this pendulum swing really, really hard right. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, wait a minute, I'm watching these people over here do the exact same thing they were complaining that these
Yeah,
people
it's
did.
cancel culture all the way around, and no one wants to recognize that.
Right. I like, wait a minute. For 8 years, you guys complained about this, but now you get into a position, kind of an authority or something, and you're doing the exact same thing.
Yeah, you're not right enough, or yeah, you voted for Trump, but you're not standing behind his every choice, and you should stand behind
Right.
everything he does. And I just think when we,
Right.
how that's a tricky, slippery slope because
Well,
it sounds a
Thomas
lot.
Massey is a good
Yeah,
actor. That guy is like a hardcore constitutionalist,
yeah,
certainly a conservative on the right, and he disagreed with Trump on the spending bill stuff.
yeah.
And he's like, wait a minute, this is the Biden spending bill that you guys are all going to agree to. You complained about this for 2 years. Now you're wanting us to push it through. I'm saying, no, I'm not going to
Slap
vote for
Trump
that.
on there. Yeah, it's
And
just,
what did Trump say? We need to primary him, get him out.
yeah, yeah.
That's
Which is,
cancel culture on the right.
it's crazy, and I don't see that being talked about a ton. I know there's a couple right
Oh, we
wing
will.
talkers who
We
do,
will.
but it's just crazy because I think it was such a big point of conversation for the right, and
Mm-hmm.
for that to just be lost so fast because they're the ones in power. It makes me sad because I did
It
see a lot
does.
of hope in it, but when you become so I don't even know if I would say just like a tribe. Like, it really is, if it came
It
down to
is.
it is, but it's even more than that. I think it's more than a tribe in the sense it's just something they can't even shed, and it dictates everything they do, and it dictates their personality, which is exactly what you're making fun of the left for doing. And it's
Right.
just no one's actually going to make forward progress if it's just this continue a radical shift each way, and no one
Right.
wants to address that because it feels good to be in power, it feels good to win, and you trust your government to do what you thought they were going to do. But
Yeah. Call me cautiously optimistic here. Because trust me, in the coming days, I will definitely be airing some stuff that's I am not going to make any friends on the people on the right.
yeah.
They're going to be really angry with me, but again, don't care. That's not what we're trying to do here.
Yeah.
Is well, again, kind of. I think the reach out that they did to people on the left, the Make America Healthy Again, the Maha stuff, the Tulsi Gabbard. He went on Joe Rogan. Now everybody on the left accuses Joe Rogan of being a right winger. I'm like, have you actually listened to this guy for the past 10 years? Joe
Yeah.
Rogan on the right? Come on. No. Because there is some outreach to the left, and I think that there was a lot of independent voters who were center left, pretty moderate milquetoast people, just like me, maybe a little more on the left.
Yeah.
That are saying, look, that the left went too far. Don't agree with everything this guy's saying, but we got to get rid of this lunacy.
Yeah.
So for the meantime, bated breath, let's go roll with this. And of course, as time starts rolling, it's like, okay, there's a little bit of seeing kind of an axe to grind, a little bit of vengeance there. And it's okay. Some of that's actually probably warranted, but a lot of it, you know how the public gets.
Yeah.
He gets an axe to grind. It amplifies it. I mean, we're watching with the burning of all the Teslas, and, you know, the people on the left are doing the same thing to the right, and the right kind of, again, it kind of goes both ways. And I have some hopes for this J.D. Vance guy because he grew up poor, Ohio, Appalachia. Mother was an addict, so he's seen life from bottom of life's shoe. Goes to Harvard, comes a tech bro, and you look at him and it's like, holy shit, he's like the most eloquent guy in government right now. And we saw that whole debacle with the Signal release came up, and it's like, whoa, no one's making an argument. It's like, you guys are just deciding foreign policy like you're talking about a Call of Duty video game.
Yeah.
Ha 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 ha, we just bombed that guy, brought down the whole thing. Not care about the innocent people. And the one person that actually seemed to make any sense here was J.D. Vance going, you sure?
Yeah.
That ain't much, but that tells me a lot. It was like, wait a minute.
Yeah.
He's taking a pause going, should we do this? So I got a little bit of hope for that. Again, as you get older, it's true, we get a little jaded, get a little cynical, and it's hard to see, you know, government behave itself, or good people actually get in there that truly want to do the right thing.
Yeah.
But, you know, you can't be a Debbie Downer all the time. You got to cling to some of that stuff. And hopefully you and I can maybe encourage amongst our peers, because I know I'm trying to figure out, why does more the millennials than the Gen Z? Strangely enough, the Gen Z seem to be more middle of the road, the millennial, the man bun dudes. That drink the kind of identity politics stuff. Why there's this kind of hatred towards the boomers? Okay, I'm trying to see both ways. And at the same time, I want to be able to tell young people, there are things you can do. You have agency.
Yeah.
You're an American. You've got incredible freedoms. There are a million opportunities. Tennessee, come move here. Get a tent, get you an RV, live here 1 year, and you get to go to college for free.
Yeah.
You become an electrician. There are avenues to do this, but you kind of got to get off your backside, and you do got to put in the effort, you know, nose to the grindstone.
Yeah. Effort's definitely lost, which I think it comes and goes every generation. There's always going to be a divot where you kind of grew up in money, you grew up with security, so you didn't see someone working hard. You didn't see what that looked like. You just kind of thought it was going to fall into your lap. And that's why I don't want to hold it against my generation by any means, but I do feel like we're the generation that kind of, for the most part, fell into some really good situations. And we grew up not really having to worry about really huge financial crises. And that kind of prepped our brains to see the world in a specific
Right.
way and expect a lot out of life, and not really see what it means when, oh, you actually have to put in the work to get there. Like, you really have to make a way for yourself and determine what's right and wrong for yourself and really just take on life. And I think COVID is a huge factor, but we
Yeah.
missed a huge developmental period in our life because we were isolated, and you're isolated with your family especially. So you just kind of take on the tribe sense of your family as well, and that really isolated us and took away our social skills, our thinking skills, and our identity development. And we're just kind of now coming out of that and seeing what that means. But like, are we actually going to ever figure out that we missed this huge part and we need to backtrack a little bit, or are we just going to keep plowing through and try and make it work?
Right. This is what really intrigues me about. And by the way, audience, Holland and I barely know each other. We have literally had maybe a couple hours of conversation trying to assemble our project here. So we're discovering this along with you. I mean, we hopefully kind of figure out what we're all trying to do as we figure it out. Very good point, though, of this, because I remember hearing a story that said, if you look back at the old school money, like the Vanderbilts and, the Bilderberg, anybody from like the old school Gilded Age in America, the families of big money, blue bloods, if you will. The money from that usually only lasted 3 generations. Now, you would think that some of these people in today's dollars had more money than Jesus. They would have made Elon Musk look like a cobbler, I mean, it's like, get down, pal. What happens? And a weird sort of a thing goes, I think when we look at Biden with his son Hunter, here's a classic example. Someone that comes through power, gets a lot of wealth, and you look at the kid who's like got no worries in the world.
Yeah.
Now, in his case, he chooses to party down, boys. And as a consequence, what is he going to be able to do for his kids when he has kids?
Yeah.
Once he exhausts the family money, it's like, well, what skills, what things are you going to impart upon your children? 0. And it's easy to see how people just flush it all down the toilet.
Yeah.
Thankfully, I started out poor and I got most of it left. But at the same time, I think that's a really good discussion for having the kind of conversation of, the day come around that you ever have children, you're going to be able to say, rather you got money, you don't. It's like, okay, kid, you're going to have to earn this.
Yeah.
You ain't getting spit here. I'll do my best to educate you. But we're going to get to this point and snip, you're on your own. Yeah. Kick those legs or you're going to drown, that kind of a thing. There's a little bit of tough love to that. And again, you're right. It's kind of fascinating. It's like, okay, could I blame you and your generation for being able to grow up in that particular time with that mindset? Okay, I have a feeling that when it comes time when your parents, your kids are going to turn out far different. You're going to have a very different perspective. The economy's changing a great deal right now.
Yeah.
Not looking really that great. It'll be interesting to see as time unfolds. So there's a lot going on out there. But anyway, I don't want to go too incredibly long. Do you have anything else you want to go, or?
No, I'm just excited to keep on diving in. Obviously, this is very surface level for our first time, but I feel like it gives a good comprehensive look at the conversations we do want to have and will be having. And I'm just excited to kind of dive deeper on each topic alone and really look at it.
And hey, and you guys as the audience out there, go ahead, share in the comments. What are the kind of topics? What are the things that you think are like most important? Just based upon like our conversation, as we'll find out in the future, though, we would like to be able to include a community to this. We'd like to be able to. I'm trying to learn more about a younger generation because I don't want to be like my neighbors over there that sees every young person goes, those entitled little snot noses. Okay, some of them are, but not all of them.
Yeah.
And is it their fault? How were they raised? Was their parents just miserable cads? Or were they engaged in doing something? Let's put away the stopping of like blaming generations. Same thing, let's not blame people or identify the color of their skin or their religion or the race, or why don't we just treat each other all as individuals? Because I don't know. I like to cherish the fact that, one, we do live in a great country, the
Mhm.
best, and we have all of these freedoms and we have these opportunities. As a whole, we're kind of in a pickle.
Yeah.
So let's talk about it
Yeah.
and
Yeah. I love that. Yeah, let's just
figure out
talk
a way.
about it. I really am excited to just take down the barriers and conversations that no one wants or expects us to talk about, especially with our differences, and kind of realize that that doesn't have to be a scary conversation.
Right. And we will probably, as we become more comfortable with everything, we'll probably dive into places we shouldn't or anything, because we can't be afraid to fail, because too many times back and forth, especially here in the last, I would say, 10 to 15 years, I've really noticed it. People start calling things racist, misogynist. They throw out these names and transphobe, all of, and it's to control people, to put people in fear so they don't have conversations.
Mhm.
They're too afraid to speak your mind and can't do that.
Yeah.
You just can't. So,
Or good.
anyway, yeah. Hopefully, this will all turn out great for our introductory podcast, and we'll see how it goes. Audience, please, sure, like, subscribe, and try and engage us. Let's have a community, and let's kind of let's have a conversation.
Love it.
Hey, take care, everybody.